I'm going to welcome you to, as long as the count has been correct, it's the 23rd annual Candidates Forum since we gained independence. So we've been around a while. Would you please silence your cell phones? As a matter of introduction, I'm David Taylor, the Search Committee Chair. I thank the other members of the committee who've worked very hard this year for me, because I was tied up with other things. Didn't expect that. So Susan French-Allen, Beth Crowley, Denny Dixon, Esther Goldstein, and Paul Rush, who are all here today, and I thank them all for their help this year. Also, a special thanks to Linda Irwin, who provided the committee with excellent and invaluable support from the staff. So, Linda, thank you very much. I'm very glad to say that we have 4 strong candidates this year. We have Steve Belacqua, Bill Bengen, Kathleen Sartoris, and Tom Swikowski. I thank them all for running for the board. It's a wonderful way to support the community. So let's give them a round of applause. Just as a reminder, there are 3 positions open on the board, or will be on January 1st, and there's a total of 7 board members. You've all got copies of the platform summaries, and one other question: if somebody's taken a card to write a question and they want to hand it in, Beth will come down the middle and you can hand it to the middle of the room and she'll collect the questions. I do have to tell you, though, we've probably already got more questions than we're going to be able to cover in the 2 hours that's allotted for this. But of course, if you all want to stay till 8 o'clock tonight, that will be fine too. We can ask them all. Seating at the table and the order of the opening remarks has been set by pulling lots. So the order is, as you see it, from Bill down to Tom. That's the order that they will answer. They will make their speeches. They can either come up here to do that, or they can do it from their seats. When we get to the questions, Bill will answer the number 1 question first, and then we go down the table. Number 2 question will go to Steve, and then we go down the table, and we keep going through that, so not the same person answers first every time. The candidates are limited to 5 minutes. I've warned them that we're pretty strict. So, and Paul over there is going to give them time warnings so they'll be able to know where they stand. Okay, we are recording the proceedings today. And so we try and encourage you all, if you've got friends that aren't here, get them to watch the movie. I'm sure it will be a fascinating movie. As we've done in the last few years, we've gathered questions in advance. I know a lot of people like to ask their own questions, and I'm sorry about that. But again, even consolidating questions, we've still got quite a lot. And I know that in previous years we've had one topic has dominated the whole meeting and people have been here for much longer than they wish. So that's why we do that. We've tried very hard, and I've warned the candidates that we're going to try very hard that we don't get politician answers. So evasive or vague answers, and we're going to try, and I've told them that I will try and listen, and if I think it's getting a little bit too evasive or political, we'll we'll give them a warning that it's going that way. The responses to the questions you get 2 minutes, so they've got to be good at summarizing their positions. Questions can be directed to one candidate or all candidates or 2 or 3 candidates, whatever. As it's, excuse me, as it's turned out, we did actually have a lot of questions for just 1 or perhaps 2 of the candidates, but the search committee has now worded those so that all the committee members will answer most of those questions. So we've only got a couple of questions that will be to an individual. And that's it. I think I've covered everything. I can see Beth over there nodding to me that I've covered everything, so that makes me feel good. So without further ado, we'll let Bill make his talk. And what I'll do is, you don't really want to listen to me, so we'll just go down the table. They'll talk one after another. I won't come up here and give them an introduction. They'll just carry on. So, Bill.
Okay. Just put this over here. Okay. Great. Thank you very much for this wonderful turnout. To start things off, I'd just like to ask a question of the room. How many of you were not aware when you moved here to Saddlebrook that there were 2 different HOAs within Saddlebrook? I mean, there's quite a few people, and that was my situation too. Quite frankly, I was very surprised when I got here and learned that there were 2 separate HOAs, and even shocked to learn about how bad the relations were between the 2 HOAs. One board had sued the other over an issue, and then there was a big dispute over pickleball or making different policies going in different directions. It didn't have the feel of the one community that I came here for. Well, let's talk for a minute about our own HOA 1. As residents, we put about $6 million in the kitty every year through our association dues. So it's fair to ask, what do we get for that money? More importantly, what don't we get? Are you aware that Saddlebrook, just 5 years ago, occupied the number 4 position in the 55places.com survey of residences, retirement communities, and that just 3 years later, it had dropped completely off the list. It's not on the list. In 2021, it got back on at number 50. I don't know where we are this year, but for me, for a community as great as we are, I think that's a very shameful showing. We should have a much higher ranking than that. Are you also aware that the home values in Saddlebrook obviously have appreciated? We're in the middle of a huge boom, but have you compared your home values against the values in other communities that surround us, such as Saddlebrook Ranch, Dove Mountain, Sun City? I would go on their real estate websites and compare homes of comparable square footage to what you have. I think you'd be very surprised, and not in a pleasant way. Over the years, residents have requested improvements in HON community. Some have sought walking paths around Ridgeview Boulevard. The answer, no. Pickleball players have asked their sport to be supported. The answer has been no. In a recent survey of homeowners authorized by the board, homeowners have expressed an interest in an ice cream and coffee parlor. Others wanted a sports theme bar, more hiking pads, and in the very same survey, a strong majority of the residents of HOA 1, same in HOA 2 in their survey, supported a preliminary study into the possible unification of the 2 HOAs. In every case, the answer from the board has been no, no, and no again. Now, take a drive around our community. Take a hard look at your surroundings. Are you really satisfied with the landscaping and the appearance? Drive into other communities. I think you'll find they look a lot better than we did, and that's a very sad commentary. These are warning signs that something is wrong in Saddlebrook, and they greatly concern me. So, and don't mistake me, I love Saddlebrook. It's a great community. Wonderful people, wonderful surroundings, abundant wildlife. But something's wrong here. And what is wrong? Two things in my opinion. First, all successful organizations I've encountered in my business career have managed their affairs from the outside in. What does that mean? Well, the first thing they do when they plan for products and services is to go to the consumer, the ultimate consumer, the outside, and ask them, what do you folks want? So we know what to provide for you. That's very crucial, but that's apparently not the way it's been done here. If you look at our record here, the expressed wishes of our residents and the advice of our own long-range planning committee have been completely ignored. Unlike successful organizations, we practice management from the inside out, pretty much by edict, and I think that's not a good way to run an association. Second, we need to recognize that HOA2 is our partner, and that we clearly are dependent on one another. We need to form a close working relationship with them in every important particular. We need to get our long-range planning committees working together, planning for the facilities and amenities and services that we need and in the future. Close cooperation is going to be absolutely crucial. My candidacy is all about change, about changing the way we plan, about changing the way we cooperate with HOA2. We need to plan boldly for our future and budget conservatively. And I'd appreciate your vote so that I can begin pursuing the changes I've talked about on your behalf. I'm a great believer in the future of Saddlebrook. The sky is the limit here, in my opinion. But we need to stop squandering our natural advantages and work together to realize our community's brilliant potential. There is no reason that we should not be number one on every list. Thank you.
At least I didn't trip on the way down here. I want to thank you all for coming today. I'm Steve Belacqua. My wife Helen and I have been residents of Saddlebrook since 2016. We chose to retire in Saddlebrook because we saw it as a welcoming, very active and well-managed community. And it was a place where I didn't have to shovel snow and mow the lawn. I appreciate the opportunity of introducing myself and letting everyone know what my commitment would be to the residents of HOA1 if I am elected to represent you on the board of directors. I believe that if I'm elected, it would be because you trust that I would represent all HOA1 residents and their collective concerns equally and fairly when making decisions that affect financial, social, and your interests. What I offer you is my 55 years of professional experience as a wealth manager, investment advisor, program developer, and business owner, as well as the insight and perspective that I have gained as a member of our finance committee and other community-related activities that I've participated in since I moved here. My profession required research, investment analysis, and diligent review of all aspects of my clients' needs before a decision could be made that would have a major financial impact on their lives. Since the decisions made by the board have the same impact on people's lives here in Saddlebrook, I pledge to use the same approach as a member of the board, and I will listen and address your concerns in an open-minded manner. You know, when you live in a community like ours and the issues arise that can affect you financially or socially, it's impossible not to have a personal opinion. For example, currently there is an issue concerning unification and/or the merger of the two HOAs. As a resident, I can have a personal opinion on this or any other issue that comes up to the board. But as a board candidate, my personal opinions or views need to be set aside. My responsibility is to listen and consider the views and the opinions of all of our residents because that's the duty of an HOA board member. HOA board members are elected to represent the issues and concerns of all their residents, and not the issues of just some of their residents. When those issues become a board's agenda, they need to be looked at objectively by each member of the board with the best interest of the entire resident population in mind. To arrive at a decision, there needs to be a diligent review of the financial impact, needs and cost analysis, and often a review of the potential CC&R and legal compliant possibilities. My decision to seek a seat on the board was not based on any personal agenda. It was based only on my desire to offer my time, talent, and energy to help maintain and improve HOA 1, Saddlebrook community as a whole, and the active retirement lifestyle that brought us all here to live. Therefore, my approach and the positions I take on each issue and/or request that's brought to the board will be based on a thorough needs analysis, financial viability, and a diligent review of all aspects that may impact the lives of all HOA 1 residents in both positive and/or negative ways. That is my commitment to you. If you are comfortable with my commitment and my approach, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Wow, good afternoon. I guess I still need the microphone with this crowd. This is very exciting to see all these residents and my fellow neighbors here. Your interest in our community and our governance is just one reason I think that you'll find my candidacy interesting. I'm running because I see the board as a service position to the residents, particularly representing the full community and many viewpoints. I am running for the board to bring a fresh perspective, needed motivation and vision with an emphasis on planning for the near and the far term. My campaign theme is forward, which is the direction HOA 1 needs to go. There are three main areas I focus on. One is improved communications. This is across the board, both two-way communication with you and me and the board, and also communication across our committees and the other individuals that are volunteering with our governance. Long-range planning, number 2, very important. Otherwise, we want to keep this going, and we do need to look ahead. And finally, cooperation and collaboration between HOA 1 and HOA 2. This is for the betterment of the overall community. If we work together, we can establish areas that have benefits and value. If we work together, we can also identify areas that don't have benefit and value. Two-way communication. Ours is a community that's filled with really smart people. So it's foolish to expect 7 people to have all of the answers, and especially behind the curtain. I will work with the board to be inclusive of the community's input and be transparent and myself personally accessible to make sure that people have the information they need and I have the information I need to share with the board to rule on any decision making. For example, the recent survey and hundreds of residents' comments should be used by the board within all areas of HOA 1 planning. We are trying to make this happen. This is going to require listening, incorporating facts, data, and ideas, and work. I would make sure there's transparency on these issues and provide more opportunities for resident dialogue with a closed-loop communication. Communication across committees. Being on the long-range planning committee for the last couple of years, I have seen and have friends on other committees. There is some really good work going on, but we need to all be going in the same direction. Regular intercommittee interaction may yield synergistic results and combine to go forward. The board can enable this. Cross-pollination of committees can enable comprehensive long-range planning. In the years following the transition from Robeson, HOA1 board, committees, and staff clearly did the heavy lifting to get our community up and running and financially solid. Good management and maintenance is important, yet better utilized with a specific vision for the future beyond. Amenities we enjoy today need to be supported and fueled by a new stream of people and the turnover that will make this community go forward. We can be ready and evolving through that with long-range planning. Number 3, improve collaboration with HOA2. This is a pivotal objective. As we look to the future of HOA1, we want to think of this as one community. There are economies of scale that may be had and greater possibilities of amenities and services. It certainly might reduce confusion, competition, and duplication. We need to look into that. It's not necessarily a legally binding situation, but we need to cooperate much more than we currently are. If you agree to keeping our community moving forward, I would ask you to vote for me in the election. And remember, I need you, not just for votes. I need you to make this community go forward, and we can do that communicating together. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Swikowski, and I'm here to ask for your vote today. I'd like to start by thanking David and his committee for putting on this forum so that we have an opportunity to address each of you. And I'd like to thank you all for coming and spending your valuable time to listen to us. A little bit of background. I was raised in Michigan. Graduated from Eastern Michigan University with a bachelor's degree in business administration, and I received my CPA license there. I began my career in public accounting and remained in that for several years. The desire to improve, make a positive difference, and to contribute is a part of my character. And after approximately 7 years in public accounting, I left public accounting and went into the private sector, where I became a controller and chief financial officer, knowing that I could make a bigger difference for a corporation being on the inside in management than being outside. So that's my makeup. I want to contribute. I want to make things better. I decided to leave Michigan, move to Florida, where I met my lovely bride, Sandy. And we were there for a few years and then moved down to California. And about 10 years ago, we did the Stay and Play. And like many of you, you go up the hill on Saddlebrook Boulevard and you go down the hill and you go, wow, this looks like a special place. And here we are, and we're glad we made the change. When I moved here, I decided to make a contribution to the community as best I could. I started out by volunteering as a unit rep for Unit Rep 2, and I learned much about the community, and what was also important is speaking to the other reps, learning what was on the other units' minds. I quickly found that Saddlebrook Golf is the best around, and so I joined the SMGA and decided, obviously, again, to get involved. So I became a board member of the SMGA, started out as a handicap chairperson, then went on to become the vice president, and last year became the president of the SMGA. With my accounting experience, being a CPA and CFO, I was recruited to join the finance committee, which I was very glad to do. After being on the committee for a year, they asked me if I would be a co-chair, and I said, yes, of course I would. 2 years ago, I was asked to be the chair of the committee, the Finance Committee, and I did so, and that's where I currently serve. I also do a little golf course work. I volunteer on Saddlebrook number 2 and repair divots, pick up broken tees, repair ball marks on the greens. Very high quality stuff, but it's a contribution. Sandy and I love and believe in and want to make our community the best it can be. Thus, Sandy serves on the Senior Village Board of Directors, and she has chaired the House Committee and is currently involved with the club renovation. I'm not here to push any specific agenda. I am not critical of our current board. I think they're doing a great job. Do I believe we can do better? Absolutely. And that's why I'm running. I'm running for a position on the board to help improve things. Our HOA is financially strong, and I will strive to ensure that it continues to be so. Our amenities are the best, and I want to make sure they remain so in a cost-effective way. Our residents have concerns, suggestions, and genuinely care. Thus, I want your voices to be heard, and I promise to acknowledge them and make sure they are addressed in a timely manner. I will provide guidance to management and hold them accountable for the operations of our community. Regarding the discussions about United Saddlebrook, that's big. So many people here get very defensive and do not want to hear any discussions about a merger of the two HOAs. Unfortunately, I believe this has become the opposite impact of what the name suggests. Unfortunately, I think it's starting to divide rather than unite. However, we do need to address and look at joint efforts that will improve our community and the lives of our residents. Such things as coordinating restaurant closures so we have more dining options is an example. These types of benefits can only come from joint efforts of the two HOAs. Thus, I will strive to improve the relationship between the HOA at the board and management level. In summary, why should you vote for me and why am I the right choice? My career in finance and accounting has provided me with great experience and knowledge which I will use to be your effective board member. I have a proven record of volunteering in our community and do it successfully, as demonstrated by being president of the SMGA and also chair of the Finance Committee. And I pledge that as a board member, I will always be prepared. I will always vote in the best interest of our community and all the residents, not just a few. So in closing, I would ask you to allow me to represent you. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now we get to the questions. Okay. The first one, the first person to answer the first question, as I mentioned earlier, would be Bill, and he has 2 minutes. What do you think are the major responsibilities of a board member, and what experience, including any that you've had on an SB1 committee, do you feel that has enabled you to meet those requirements and responsibilities of a board member?
Okay, fair question. I think the primary responsibility of board member is to translate the dreams and needs and wants and desires of the residents into reality. That is just about the only reason people sit on a board. People can't make that happen individually, so they elect representatives to get the job done, to study issues, and provide them the best services, the best amenities, the best facilities that their money can buy. And that's something that needs to be taken very, very seriously, because the mix of facilities and amenities we provide have to satisfy not only you folks here today, they also have to satisfy people who will be looking at our community in the future. We have to sustain our attractiveness to new people because we need a steady flow of people buying homes in Stouterbrook to sustain home values and give everybody an opportunity to really enjoy things to the maximum. I've had a lot of experience in business. I served on my own family's corporate board. I served on the Huntington Chamber of Commerce board of directors. I headed the social committee in La Quinta, where I lived in California. I also was on the board of directors of the boat club. I haven't served on any committees here, but I've attended regularly meetings of the board and of the Long Range Planning Committee, which I think is one of the very most important committees there are in Saddlebrook. The Long Range Planning Committee is tasked basically with finding out what we need to keep our community viable, what facilities and amenities services we need to develop into the future. I kind of use an analogy, Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, he also used to talk about, he never skated toward the puck, he always skated where the puck was going to be. That's where we need to be skating, toward the puck, toward the future.
Sorry, Steve, just carry on down the line.
Okay, thanks. Before I decided to, before I made the decision that I was going to run for the board, throw my hat in the ring, I felt that I had to actually answer that question. What are the duties of a member of HOA1 board? And I did a little research. I looked it up, okay? The first one is make sure the community complies with all governing documents, including HOA state laws and county laws. The second duty is enforcing rules laid out by the CC&Rs when homeowners are in violation. That doesn't include anyone here, I don't think, right? The third would be to maintain common areas and amenities. And the fourth major duty is probably the most important in my eyes, and that's to oversee the budget, collect homeowner dues, and manage the HOA finances. Also, additional duties, hold meetings to discuss important neighborhood issues. And every board member in an HOA has the fiduciary responsibility to act in good faith, inform members before acting, and to communicate and be transparent. That, to me, was what I had to make a decision on as to whether I could fulfill those duties. I believe I can. I've been on the Finance Committee, actually with Tom, for the last year, and I've learned a lot, and I think the Finance Committee is an important committee when it comes to how things go in an HOA. I honestly had not deep dived into financial statements since I was in college, so I did learn a lot. We have a very good finance committee, and it was a learning experience, and I feel that I could contribute. Of course, more on the investment side, perhaps, than on the bean counting side. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think, as Steve said, there are some very serious responsibilities with being a board member. I think what I would bring to the board is to make sure that I understand that I'm representing the residents. It is hard to please everybody all of the time, but there should be instances where if we take a survey or we have dialogue or a special meeting around a subject, that any discussion is transparent from the board, as well as there is a response or there is a follow-up, as I said, closed-loop communication. I feel like there is sometimes not a good route to opine. I also feel like the more information people have, the less their brain develops rumors, passes rumors, etc. I don't think that if I'm on the board, there should be any need to guess what is going on. So I think that's something that I bring to that, as well as I execute. Yes, you have to do a lot of analysis and work, as I said. You really need data, you need facts. It is not my opinion. And I think that, as it's been said, I would definitely agree. I think the other issue in terms of fulfilling the requirements is, again, to develop relationships, not only within the community, but also with HOA too. Definitely, there may be a lot of other opportunities to collaborate. We do that now. However, we need to do that in a much better way where it benefits both parties. Thank you.
I think to sum it up pretty easily, what the major responsibility is, as Steve said, a fiduciary interest, that we act in the best interest of the community, and that's the community as a whole. I have been a part of management of many corporations at a very high level position. And usually to do that, you need to learn to get along with others, and you need to know that there's going to be conflicts, but in the end, you need to be successful. And sometimes you have people pulling in different directions, but this is where the fiduciary responsibility comes into play. We need to do what's best for the community and all the residents as a whole. My background in finance and accounting and being on the chair of the finance committee has provided me with the inner workings, the finances of this organization that we all call home. So when I become the board member, I can hit the street running on the day one because I'm familiar. I work with Vivian, Mike Roddy, Chris Pryor. So all of the areas of this that are so important at this community, I've worked with all of those people that manage those departments. So again, I think I can hit the street running on the very first day. So thank you.
Thank you. Now this time we'll start with Steve, and as we learn through there, you just go from one to the other. We don't need an introduction. The resident survey indicated much support for a hiking trail and a coffee and ice cream shop. Do you support investing in these two projects? And how would you address the lack of enthusiasm for the trail that the current board members demonstrated at their September 29th meeting?
Quite frankly, the coffee, the deli, the ice cream shop, honestly, I'm not sure why the addition of these shops were the number one desired amenity, I'll be honest with you. Especially since it's pretty well known that we don't have any land to build 3 shops, let alone maybe even one that has all 3 items in it. Not that any of those things are bad, I just don't know that we have the room. And I'm not sure, quite frankly, at least at this point, that creating another profit center here to compete with Catalina businesses like the Starbucks at Basher's, the new Dairy Queen that's coming, Lick's Ice Cream Shop, I'm not sure that we'd end up profitable. I said I'm not sure, I don't know. And I don't think that the residents would be okay if they were not profitable to be subsidizing these profit centers. However, I do know from being on the Finance Committee and also attending the budget hearings, Chris, Food and Beverage Manager, has listened to the people as a result of the survey and is looking at the possibility of getting a coffee machine that would provide specialty coffees like lattes. So it's not like it's totally being ignored. So my opinion is we need additional information. I'd want to do a detailed needs and cost analysis before making a decision and moving forward. And I would like to hear from 51% of the HOA1 residents who have not responded to this question or many of the other questions on the survey. And by the way, I highly recommend Lick's ice cream. It's very good. It's locally made.
Thank you. So this is a very interesting question, having led the 2022 survey process. One of the things that is going on right now is crunching the data. We set up that survey very particularly so we can actually do a lot of analytics with it. And this gives us more and more information. I think to Steve's point, the number one ice cream, coffee, or deli, that was probably not expected to be number one. And what I have planned is to send a follow-up survey so that we can understand, is it coffee? Is it ice cream? If people would rather go to Lick's, they don't need the ice cream. We really need to hear further depth on what people are envisioning with that. I think another thing is we do need to understand it as well. But I think that instead of identifying the obstacles right now, we should look at what can we do. If we find out it's coffee, maybe a coffee machine in a different area. I work with Chris and definitely have heard that option. But I really think that we need to be a little more imaginative about how do we do it, not the obstacles in our way. I would also say that we do subsidize food and beverage, as you all know, and we subsidize golf. So I understand the concern if we have to subsidize a coffee shop. However, once again, that's an obstacle that we don't know. We need more information, and I really want to know now from the residents. And I'm going to the unit rep meeting next week to really drill down on what it is people want. One quick comment on the hiking. As part of that question, I think that it was too quickly dismissed. I think there was a plan in there to, once again, not what isn't going to work, but what might work. And as we do that, we can develop other solutions.
Okay, regarding the hiking trail, so if I were a board member, I would have actually walked that trail and seen exactly what some people might be objecting to. And if there were strong objections that were valid, then I have to believe we could reroute the trail somehow. We were out driving today on the road, and Sandy and I both commented, boy, it's a dangerous people walking here. You're walking on the road, and you have a golf cart coming at you, so the golf cart has to go out on the road. You got cars coming up behind you. So it is a situation, I think, that should be looked into further. I'd have to believe that there would be space where we could put a hiking trail someplace where people, lifestyles were not impaired. I mean, I just have to believe we can. Regarding the ice cream and coffee shop, I mean, that'd be a nice thing, but maybe we should think outside the box. Maybe we could run a space in the Minute Mark. But it's something that if the residents want, then there should be a way that we can come up with it. Thank you.
When you ask residents to take their valuable time to fill out a survey and answer a lot of questions, that was a long survey, provided a lot of valuable information, but it took time to complete it. And when residents indicate a clear preference to me on a survey like that, I don't regard that as a suggestion, or would you please do this, or this would be kind of neat, please. It's kind of like, for me as a board member, that'd be my doggone marching orders. You folks are my boss when I'm on the board of directors. And if you tell me you really want something badly, it's up to me to find a way to do it. That's my attitude. And we'll investigate something like that and see how it can be affordable and done. But I wouldn't start out by saying, it's a neat idea, but we don't want to do it. I would say, you want it, I'm going to find a way to do it. With respect to the hiking trails, which is another issue people expressed a strong preference for on that survey. Your question, I think, what was the board's state of mind in deciding on that? I want to make sure I get it right, so I'm answering.
Okay, I said if you were on the board and the board was showing a distinct lack of enthusiasm for a hiking trail, how would you address that?
Well, once again, I think Tom made a point. You'd investigate, you go out and you actually walk the trail with a hiking club. What are the reasons for it? Why is it so important to be here as in place somewhere else? Talk to the residents, go to the residents' homes. Find out what their particulars is, and then make the best decision you can. In general, once again, because people have expressed an interest in hiking trails, I would have a strong preference to go in that direction, unless there was a clear, serious personal issue that would not be acceptable to individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, actually, this is a bit of a follow-up, but some residents have expressed the view that with the lack of action on those two projects in particular, does this show a general lack of the board addressing the desires and wishes of residents? And if you feel that is the case, can you give some examples of other issues where that's, other projects where that might have happened? But sometimes as well, some projects, for instance, I might want an indoor swimming pool. That might not be the most beneficial project in the place. So how do you address the projects that people want that aren't perhaps feasible at this point in time? I guess we start with Kathleen this time.
Well, in my experience, I feel like I don't have all of that information. And sitting on committees, there isn't a lot of transparency in terms of, you may ask a question and hear that something you're working on, that can't be done. So I think it's a question of really taking the time to analyze it. This requires work. I think like Tom and Bill said, you go out and you actually walk that trail. You think about why that would be valuable instead of there's one or two obstacles. So, for me, I don't know whether there's enthusiasm or not, because there's not a lot of discussion, open discussion at board meetings, and I would need more information. I do think that there is that feeling with the survey that there really ought to be a little more conversation and follow-up with regard to, as I mentioned, ice cream, deli, coffee, and walking paths. I mean, these things are in the top three. I understand the question about, well, somebody wants an indoor pool. Okay, much easier said than done. I just think we do have come from this position of pushback. And I think that we need to be more imaginative. We do have land. We do have a way to repurpose land. Things are not always permanent and not able to be investigated. So I would just be doing that work rather than saying, well, that's probably not going to work or it's too hard.
David, I need a little clarification. Would you pose that question again, please?
Okay, I reworded my question a little bit, but it was basically, It began with residents feel, or some residents feel, and this was reflected in the questioning, that these two projects that have
Hiking
not
and the ice
really
cream.
gone forward indicate a general lack of response to the residents' desires and wishes. And
Okay.
my question was, do you feel that's true, that there is a more, I mean, I've heard your comments on those two, but in general, do you think that's true? And also, if some residents come up with projects that aren't totally feasible at the moment, how would you respond to them?
Okay. I don't feel that that is a common problem amongst our current board of directors. The hiking trail, I think it was voted down, and I think there were reasons such as some of the neighbors felt they were losing privacy, and I think there was also an issue regarding perhaps wildlife or something, but that was voted down for that specific trail. That does not mean that the board can't say, this trail, we can't use this trail, but we can put an alternate path out there someplace else. So unfortunately, I think a lot of times a few make a lot of noise to make it sound that it's worse than it is, and I don't think so. I think our board currently and our management team is doing a great job. What would I do if somebody basically, it sounds like, made an unreasonable request or a request that wasn't possible? You'd have to sit down with that individual and explain to him why this is not possible, at least possible at this time. Maybe down the road it will be, but at this time it's not possible. And if it's not a feasible project, then there's obviously got to be some pretty stark reasons why it's not, and that just gets explained to the person. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm concerned that the residents, as I mentioned earlier in my speech, have made many requests for things, and almost none of them have been approved by the board. One example, when I first moved back here back in 2019 with my wife when she was alive, and we were interested in walking paths. I walk every day. I walk about 15 to 20 miles a week, and I do it mainly around Ridgeview. And I can tell you, it's a beautiful community to walk around, but walking on Ridgeview can be dangerous. You know, we're sharing the space with golf carts and bicyclists, and although most of those folks are very considerate and move out of the walking path when they see it coming, for which I wave and appreciate for that, they don't always do that. But I was at a meeting, I guess, after we shortly moved in, and they talked about, they had examined the possibility of walking paths, and it was $400,000, and that because of the cost, they simply rejected it. A lot of people have asked for walking paths. That's also high on the list on the survey. And it seems to me that, like any family organization that perhaps doesn't have the resources to do something immediately, why couldn't we perhaps have said, let's set up a saving program over 3-4 years, set aside $100,000 a year until we have enough money to do it, rather than just giving a flat no. I think another issue is pickleball, which is probably going to elicit a reaction. I think the whole pickleball issue, I only came in on the tail end of it, but I think the way that was handled by our community was an embarrassment and continues to be an embarrassment. If you look at every other community in our area, they have endorsed, they have embraced pickleball. There was a special on NBC News recently, the other day, which said it is a fast and growing sport in America. We are an active adult community. We've got to have it, and we're not supporting it. That's unfortunate.
I'm glad I have an opportunity to speak a little bit because I didn't approach this when it was asked the first time, but I personally don't think there was a lack of interest on the part of the board. I listened in on that board meeting, and there were a lot of resident comments that the board listened to. And however, I want to applaud the hiking club in the first place. They did an excellent presentation, stated their case, did everything that they could do. But I think the board made the right decision voting it down, at least this particular proposal. However, the board didn't vote it completely out of the picture because when I listened, Don Aratola actually recommended, and the board agreed, to move that back to a committee level and look at other potential places perhaps that we could put it. So my opinion on this is that we do need additional information. The concept is good. The current proposal, I think, is lacking some information that I would like to see if I were on the board. Perhaps optional locations that are less disruptive to residents, since there were so many comments about that. And perhaps a combined effort with HOA2 on a committee level could be considered, because I think the RUA comes into play here because they would have use, it's an amenity, they would have use of this amenity as well. And I think that would be a good opportunity to take a look at, perhaps even in their, on their property, there could be some contiguous land that we could do this and not have the problems with residents being concerned about their privacy.
Okay, thank you. Now we're with Tom. The boards and staffs of both HOAs report they are working on to find ways to improve the services and or the cost efficiency of those services. What is your assessment of the initiatives currently underway, and give some examples of them if you've got some. But do not give me your views on where we could do additional work in that area, because that will be the next question. So just now assess where we're at with this cooperation between the two HOAs, and that begins with Tom.
Okay. The cooperation obviously can always be better. When you have conflicting issues, which we do have, you still need to get the task accomplished, and that task is to make the lives of the residents here as good as it can be. So can there be improvements in that relationship? Absolutely. I think there probably was a little friction after the last RUI was negotiated, and we've got another one coming up in several years. So obviously, we need to work together, and that's what I said in my opening speech. I think we need to strive to work closely with HOA board and management level, both HOAs, because there are many projects that we need both sides to agree on, and if we're to make all lives of all of our residents better. So there's always, as I said, room for improvement. So if I were elected to the board, that will be one of my initiatives, is to make sure that we build a better relationship with the board of HOA2 and at management level.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I mentioned in my speech that one of the two major concerns, initiatives I felt we need to do was to build a better relationship with our sister association, HOA2. It's very, very important. We were created originally as one organization. Some of the newer folks here may not be aware that back in the early 1990s, there was a dispute over the availability of golf, and some residents went to the developer, Mr. Robeson, and demanded, create more golf course space, and he wasn't willing to do it, and they threatened to sue him, and the whole thing blew up. He grew up his hands, and says, okay, we'll just create a separate HOA for you folks, and that's it. And that's where this all began. And he admits to this day, publicly, that was the worst business decision he ever made. So here we are sitting in the aftermath some 20 years later dealing with it, and it's not pleasant because basically you've taken all the resources that were intended for one association and split them among two, create an agreement, a reciprocal use agreement, which only does half the job. It doesn't provide for mutual funding and study of facilities and amenities. It just allows each other's residents to use it. So we are so closely intertwined. You look at a map, our facilities are used by each other's members. It makes down a lot of sense for us to be working out cooperative efforts with them in a lot of areas. We could do a great deal of good. I believe we could save money, we could become more efficient, be more targeted. We could do things combined that we might not be able to do individually as associations. And I've already begun that process. Saturday they would say, I don't want it sale. And there were a couple of the HOA2 candidates there, and I went over and talked to them. I said, hey, if you folks get elected and I get elected, why don't we sit down and talk? So that's my opinion. Thank you.
I believe from talking with Vivian and talking with other board members that are here, that we are in fact continuing to communicate with HOA2 on several levels. As Tom said, could it be better? Perhaps it could be better. But as I said in as my priorities, one of the priorities would be to continue a synergistic relationship with HOA2. There have been times that I'm aware of that we have done well, and we can reach economies of scale by working together. The golf maintenance people, they went in with each other in the purchase of seed in order for us as a whole, as Saddlebrook, to get better pricing. That may change because HOA2 has now gone to an outside organization to run their golf operation. But I do believe that we are trying to work together. We should continue to work together on a committee level, on a management level, and board to board. I do think we're doing that. I think we should continue to do that. And I think it will eventually bring us together as neighbors. Whether or not we have to be one Saddlebrook in order to do that, I'm not sure that that's necessary, but as I said in my opening statement, I would need more information before I would make any decision as far as that goes. But I do think we're working on that level, on committee level, on a management level, and looking for opportunities to work together and be good neighbors. Thank you.
The couple of things there. The joint statement that was issued by two presidents for HOA1 and HOA2 did identify some things of cooperation and examples. There's also a statement in there that says both boards agree that the best way forward is to expand our existing areas of mutual cooperation. So I think right now we're at a place, well, what is that? What exactly is the transparency that's going on or not going on? There are two examples that were in the joint statement, neither of which is actually, entirely the case. I think a new board member or a couple new board members will be able to, with a little less, background, be able to go in and meet as people first. There's a lot of discussion, well, they're different, we're different. I think that's true. I think, though, that once again, it's not what the obstacles are, it's maybe where we can find common ground. So I would be very much in favor of establishing, not, oh, well, we met for dinner last month. I would establish something that is a little more specific and scheduled so that the right hand and the left hand knows what's going on. I would also say that with food and beverage, if we weren't competing with 3 of the same things on a menu at Mountain View that are on our menu, perhaps there'd be more people staying and using our amenities and eating at Saddlebrook. So just as an example, I think we need to have better transparency of what's going on and what isn't. And the RUA is not necessarily good for several years or what have you. I think we need to prepare for how we cooperate before there is an issue with the RUA to be renegotiated.
Okay, thank you. I'll just make a comment about that. Really, what I was trying to get at with that question, or the persons that were asking that, was in order to make an assessment of the cooperation between the 2 HOAs, you should have made an assessment of what projects are going on right as of today and what you think of them. So that was really, I did hear one person say that, but let's move along, because the next question is what improvements? Now, I already heard Kathleen say there could be a concrete improvement in food and beverage, but what I'm hoping you will give us is specific projects that you see where the 2 HOAs could cooperate with each other and don't today. And we begin with Bill.
Okay. I can think of several. Let's start, for example, with marketing of our community. I once heard a board member say, well, what do we need to market for? Well, homes are selling like hotcakes in Saddlebrook. Well, they're selling everywhere like hotcakes. But when this housing boom is over, we're going to be, as we are now, competing against many other communities locally for the attention of prospective homeowners. And they're going to be looking very carefully at their options. They want to see, developments, communities that have the facilities, the amenities that they want, the activities they want to do to enjoy. We need to tell our story. Because we've been split in 2, there is no one website for Saddlebrook to which a prospective home buyer could go to that describes the community. I mean, you look at all the things we have available, all our clubs and activities, it's pretty fabulous here in Saddlebrook. Could be better, but it's pretty fabulous. We need to be able to tell a story, and the way to do that is to get the 2 HOAs to get together, work out a marketing program, maybe have an individual responsible for it, and put our story out on the internet so people can see it so there's no confusion. Another really big area, I think, is joint planning and financing of facilities and amenities. Both HOAs are being held back and doing things because they don't have the resources they might have had if they were working together. For example, HOA 2 has been looking at a multiple-purpose building and hasn't been able to do anything with that. We've been stalled here with improvements to the fitness center for years. I think it makes sense for us to work together to decide as a community, our total Saddlebrook, what facilities do we need and where and for who, and agree to a plan to build them together and finance them together. And also, just the last point, all the rules and procedures going left and right in 2 different communities, it'd be great if they got together and agreed on one new rule when they make it so we all know what we're doing. Thank you.
I think as I mentioned before, there was cooperation with the golf course maintenance. But I also think property and roads is one area that we definitely can have some combined efforts between HOA 1 and HOA 2. Maintenance of the roads. And I believe that the property and roads people have worked together with HOA too. But I definitely think that's one area that we could definitely have some synergy. Common areas is another one. And patrol. We could actually come up with a patrol between the two. But certainly we could work together in those three areas. As far as amenities, I'm not sure whether or not we could actually come to any agreement when it comes to building amenities, since we don't have the room to build amenities here. They would all be built in HOA2. That doesn't mean that I don't think we should cooperate with them as far as adding amenities to Saddlebrook community as a whole. But from a finance standpoint, I'm not sure how that would work. Again, that would have to be looked at. But certainly patrol, common area, property and roads, those would be three areas that I would say that we could actually look at as far as joint projects are concerned.
The food and beverage piece that I brought up earlier, I have had those conversations, and looking at the comments as well as the results of the survey around food and beverage, there's plenty of room to improve, and I think we could have some excellent strategic planning about how the two or the several restaurants between HOA 1 and 2 actually communicate and could plan. I know that, you know, there's different attitudes about that here, but my guess is that if we, you know, had one restaurant this way, one restaurant the other way, and we're all buying food together, et cetera, perhaps we would actually increase people staying on campus and eating there instead of driving whatever it is, an hour. So patrol is also something that I've actually talked with some people about. Once again, I hear, oh, we tried that. Well, I don't have any data from that to think that that might not work. I think, just like Steve said, we need to look at it. I think that gets back to, we need to be doing this. We need to be looking at this. Maybe it's a bust, but right now, we don't know. So I think all of these are very good ideas to collaborate on. The amenity idea, I think that once again, you got to think about the RUA. And if we do want to capitalize and save money, you do pool your resources and you don't build 2 expanded fitness centers. I don't think that's a good use of either HOA's money from that standpoint. If we are sharing amenities and we're one community, even if it's not legal or a total merger, there still can be some cooperation, and that's where we need to go.
I agree with just about everything that's been said, and that's why I've said in my opening statement that cooperation with the HOA2 board and their management level is imperative. There's probably not one amenity, be it fitness center, okay, we're going to buy this type of equipment, you buy that type of equipment. We're very limited on our space, so maybe some of the equipment that we want isn't in our facility, but it is at HOA2. So fitness center, they could cooperate on the equipment that they buy. Food and beverage, obviously, I mean, that's what I mentioned earlier. I mean, just cooperation with the food and beverage as far as what nights are you going to be closed? Okay, we'll make sure if you're closed that night, we're open this night, so that the residents of the community of all Saddlebrook have an opportunity to improve their lives. Marketing, again, that's a no-brainer, I would think. hiking trail is another example. Steve mentioned, maybe we could cooperate with HOA2 and the hiking trail would be on both properties. It could be a bigger trail, maybe a better trail. So I think the opportunities are endless as far as what we can do if we work with one another. And I think that's the route we should go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was specific, so thank you very much for responding that way. Now we'll stick with that approach. There's a lot of comments, I think, in most people's platforms around communications. Would you give your assessment of the communications that the board and staff provide to the residents? If you feel they are satisfactory, please explain why you have that view, giving examples of the methods that you think have worked and been proved useful. If you feel the communications are not good enough, please give examples of matters that have not been adequately communicated and how you would propose this to be approved. This is a personal bugaboo. Please do not simply state that the board and staff need to be more transparent.
I guess it's my turn to start. Okay. I believe we're doing a pretty good job right now. We've brought on Webmaster. We have Jason back there. We're doing pretty well as far as that type of communication. We have the communicator. There are pros and cons with some people, the cost of printing that. But there are residents, I'm sure, that would prefer to read something hard copy as opposed to seeing it on the web. But there's a lot of information that we have right now that comes from HOA1, from management, from admin office, that is on and available on the internet. That doesn't mean that everybody looks at it. And I know something that has been said to me that, you might get it, but you may not read it, okay? And a lot of people in Saddlebrook don't necessarily read. But I think that we are doing a fairly decent job in trying to get the word out. When you can come to a board meeting, I think there is transparency there. I think the people in the HOA1 have the opportunity to stand up and present their issues. We can communicate back and forth. I agree with what Kathleen has said, that there has to be give and take. It has to be between us and them and us. And I think we can improve. We can always improve. And I think we have to continue to look at technology to get there. We have done quite a bit with technology up to this point. We now have a couple of screens that we can view all the golf results, and we have all the information that is on our website. There are various TV screens that people can just walk by and see what's going on. So I think we're doing a good job, but I also think there's always room for improvement, especially as technology improves. Thank you.
I think technology is a really good point, and I do think there has been some improvement there. I think from that communication standpoint, though, it would be really nice if, whether it's a blog or whether it's a little more information than what's in the minutes, or a little more discussion, public discussion among the board and management. I think people would not, like I said, make up things they would understand, and you'd have a greater cooperation from all of us, whether it's management or the board and the residents. If you understand, then it probably prevents some issues. I would like to see with technology the ability to submit questions, receive answers. I would like to see more town halls. Here's one, a Saddlebrook 1 email that I've gotten over a couple of things. And it says, residents, we're proposing a change in Article 423 XYZ, page 82A on what have you. If you would like to see what that is and opine, you can click on this. So you click on that because nobody knows what I haven't memorized what, the numbers are. So you have to click on that to look at the issue. If you care about it or you don't, regardless, you may miss that just because of the entry doesn't make it very feasible. Also, here's an email address, but you got to cut and paste it and then send your comments. So I think we could just do better again with back and forth conversation. The only other thing I would say is, from that sort of perspective too, is how can we in long-range planning do even more with technology? I think that's going to be imperative as new people move in, and people 10 years younger than us. I think our technology is a real area where we can find some more strength, and that will actually help the flow of information and communication.
Communication, it's communication and cooperation. Communication could always be better. I'm sometimes a little befuddled when I hear, they're not transparent. Well, all of our board meetings are open. Everyone has an opportunity to speak at the board meetings. Our board meetings are taped so that if you're not able to come to a board meeting, you can listen to it at home on your own time. I think the coffees with the GM and the president of the board are very, very good. Gives all residents an opportunity to speak to Vivian, who runs this place, right? So again, I think that communication can always be better, but I think we do a pretty good job of communicating right now. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just making a short list here of the publications, email publications I get from various areas of Saddlebrook, and I read them all because I'm really interested in knowing what's going on in this community. Overall, I'd give us, a solid B+. In general, I can find just about everything I want to know about the community by reading some of those things. You have things about a committee and board meeting schedule, which is sent out regularly. We got information about clubs and their activities. Food and Beverage sends out grill and chill messages and other offerings. Golf sends out a lot of stuff, and I think it's really excellent. I'm a golfer, so I like to read about what's happening in the golfing world. I think I give them an A solid. And tennis and pickleball also give frequent communications, and the GM coffees, as mentioned, I think are excellent. They really give an opportunity to folks, residents, to ask questions and get answers. There's also the Communicator, which is a useful publication, but I have a strong opinion on that one. I don't think a community publication should be used as a propaganda tool. And I think too often that publication is used in that way. I would like to see a publication that unites the community rather than divides it. That is the only thought. Overall, I think communications are pretty good from my perspective.
Thank you. Okay, now I have a question just for Bill, but of course, if anybody else wants to comment after Bill has commented, that would be fine. But Bill, you state in your platform that HOA1 boards have abused the open meetings law. Please give examples of occasions when you know that this has been the case.
Yes. Case in point, if you remember back in April, the two HOA boards got together and issued a joint statement on mergers in which they attacked the idea of a merger. They completely rejected it without considering any of the benefits. Just, you know, that's one of those inside-out things I was talking about before. When we saw that notification, when we saw that come out, we asked, at what meetings was this matter decided? Where was notification that meeting was going to be considered? Why wasn't the public asked to provide input to this critical issue, an issue which people on the survey have indicated a strong interest in pursuing? And here is the two boards coming together, apparently through secret meetings that we have no knowledge of, no minutes or anything, and issuing a statement saying they have no interest in what their own public clearly has indicated interest in. That to me is one of the prime examples of abuse, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Anybody wish to add anything to that? No? Okay, now we will get into the unification issues. Okay, the first question is, we all know a number of people believe that we should move forward with an investigation of the unification of the two HOAs, either by merger or some other mechanism. Do you agree? Right. Do you agree that we should be moving forward to investigate that right now? And all I want at the moment, because we're going to get further into the detail, all I want from you right now is a yes or no. We should move forward yes, or we should move forward no. So that would begin with Kathleen, a yes or a no.
Can you ask the exact question so I know, just so I can understand whether you're saying what go forward means?
It means to invest. From what is being said, people want to begin an investigation almost immediately. Do you think we should or should not? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Yes. Okay. Steve?
No.
Okay. Right, now we'll get into your reasons. If you support moving forward, it's been recommended that we hire a consultant to do that work. What benefits do you see that would justify hiring a consultant? And why do you think a consultant would be better qualified to do that work than the residents? We've got a lot of expertise in this community. I guess now we're with Tom. And if you don't agree with it, which I guess is your position, Tom, why would you not support hiring a consultant to get to the bottom of whether there is or is not some advantages to getting a unification?
The reason I do not feel that it would be justified right now is I believe Mr. Robeson is involved with HOA2 for, I think it's till 2040 or until he sells all of his lots. In speaking with people, they said that Robeson will probably, and by looking at it, will probably be preserved for 6 or 7 years. So and I've heard from the board, I actually heard from United Saddlebrook, that Robeson has no intentions of amending the CCRs, which means 6 or 7 years at a minimum is where we would begin to seriously look at this. So if we're a minimum of 6 or 7 years out, why would we spend our resources on something that may or may not happen, and probably a good possibility that it wouldn't happen? I'm not going to go into the reasons why I don't think it would, because my 2 minutes would be up. So that'll be it.
Yeah, I wanted to address a point you made about the possibility of using our own resources in the community to do such a study. I think that's a terrific idea. We have a huge talent pool here in Saddlebrook. We have some very smart people, very accomplished people, lawyers, accountants, and so forth, and excellent board members, committee members that, are familiar with it. Particularly, I think it would be a good idea if we set up a volunteer group to study this issue at no cost to the community whatsoever. And finally, get some answers to some of these questions. You all know there's a lot of rumors and statements being made back and forth in the community about this. Nobody seems to have the facts. We need to get at the facts at some point. I think eventually we'll have to hire a third-party consultant to review it, somebody who's very familiar with a homeowners association business, because they have a broad exposure to the issues that we want to study, and probably will be even more efficient in the way that they propose a solution to our thing. But that may not have to be done right away. I agree with Tom, but I think at some point we should get a start on something, even with a volunteer group using local expertise.
It's difficult when you're asked a question, you have to say yes or no. You can't qualify, but I'll do a little qualification at this point. Basically, I agree with what Tom has said because I've done a little bit of research. As I said in my opening speech and comments, I may have a personal view on this, but my personal view doesn't count. As far as I'm concerned, it should be set aside. But what I did do is I also took a look at the survey and throw some numbers. 998 of the 1,760 HOA1 residents that responded to this question responded in favor of a strategic discussion beginning. However, 998 represents only 28% of the 3,574 resident population in HOA1. And there was 51% of our residents who never even came in and gave us what opinion they had on this. So even if we added the 457 undecided votes and they voted in favor, that would still only represent 40% of our residents. And I guess at this time what I wanted to say was, I don't think we have the percentage that gives us a mandate to move forward on the discussions at this time. That doesn't mean that at some point in the future, if we hear from more of our residents, we couldn't do that. So once again, additional information is needed as far as I'm concerned. We need the responses from more than the 40% that we have at this point. Thank you.
I did answer yes because of the nature of the question and working with the survey. I think people deserve to know why we get messages and joint statements saying no merger. I don't have enough information, just like everyone is saying up here. I think that makes me want information. And if somebody knows something I don't, then I'm not sure, why we all don't have the same information. As far as this survey, I hear what you're saying about percentages, but the survey was sent to everyone, and yes, this is what we have right now. But these people were interested in providing their opinion. Whether or not we have an opinion, I definitely think that you keep hearing we need some facts, we need more information. Well, this is how you get it, by actually looking at what can we do to collaborate better? What can we do to cooperate? Where would it make sense? Where wouldn't it make sense to work together? This is way down the road, cart before the horse, to talk about CC&Rs and so on. I have understood and looked into some of the Robeson issues, and quite frankly, I think part of that's a little bit of a red herring in terms of being a showstopper. Because again, I think I'd want a lot more facts right now before the RUA is once again contested or renegotiated. So I think now is the time to collaborate and cooperate and find out, even if it is a follow-up survey. I'm sitting on several things that I'm trying to get approval, to make sure we send that out. Perhaps we can do better than what was answered here. So, but to look into something, to say I won't look into it is just not really in my makeup. So I would want to look into it.
Well, actually, I was a bit relieved there. Most of you didn't seem to want to hire a consultant right away, so that's actually good news. But both HOAs have actually, I know one or two people have commented that they don't totally agree with it, but have given, in my view, a well-argued explanation of why they felt a merger would not work. And amongst their reasonings were differences in culture, structure, the private versus semi-private, and the differences in the financial strength of the two organizations. If you support moving forward with an investigation, why do you feel these reasons are not valid, or how do you feel the differences can be resolved? And if you're opposed, why do you feel these issues are insurmountable, even if both organizations approach them with an open mind? And don't worry about the Robeson opposition. That's the next question.
Okay. Thank you. Got me now? Okay. You mentioned that both HOAs have expressed opposition to this, but I remember very clearly that during the negotiations for the reciprocal use agreement of 2 years ago, HOA 2 approached during those negotiations HOA 1 and said, can we do something with a merger? Can we study this? Can we get together? And they were flatly rejected by our board. So at one time, certainly, HOA 2 was in favor of pursuing that. I think myself, there are many reasons, many potential benefits that come from a merger, but I admit that the actual merger is something way down the road, okay, for various reasons, and that we should be focusing on cooperating for now and setting things up to gain the benefits that we are. I think there are, almost every area you look at in our community, there will be benefits, combined operations. And those opportunities will grow as the time goes on. Opportunities to be more efficient, possibly to save money, to get one vision for our community. That's really what's hurting us, is that we're competing against each other for the homeowner dollar, when really we should be working together to get as many people into Saddlebrook, not Saddlebrook 1 or Saddlebrook 2, but many people into Saddlebrook as we can. And I think that if people perceived us as a single organization that had a strong purpose and one central authority that was making good decisions about the future of the community, it will be very beneficial to everyone involved.
I think the issue of private versus quasi-public, which is the two different forms of governance between our two HOAs, is an issue that should be addressed. And Kathleen has mentioned that she probably has other things on her plate that she would put into a survey. And one of the things before, again, if I were on the board, before I would make a decision, a positive decision one way or the other, on merger or even beginning discussions, I guess, would be to go out to the residents, again, to all the residents, and basically ask the question, are you in favor of Saddlebrook amenities being open to the public, or do you think our amenities should remain for a private use of Saddlebrook residents only? Because there is a difference between the two. So I think that's important. Also, I think our residents' personal feelings about a possible change from private to a quasi-public, and I'm talking about the possibility that HOA 1 and HOA 2 get together and negotiate, and the decision is made perhaps that we become a quasi-public HOA. And I would like more information from our residents. Do you think that opening our amenities would have a positive or a negative effect on your lifestyle? And provide a box perhaps on the survey to say, why do you think so? So again, I keep going back to, I would want additional information before I, as a board member, would move forward with even discussions on this, because I also agree with what Tom said, that this is at least a 6-year out situation. And again, Mr. Robeson does have a say up until that point. Thank you.
So I have heard those objections, and unfortunately some of those objections have impeded just basic cooperation or collaboration. So I think how you go forward is you actually have new people. You have new people in Saddlebrook 1, Saddlebrook 2 to sort of come together because the culture doesn't stay stagnant. So you have an opportunity with new people who adapt to a culture or change a culture, and culture is very important. I've heard some examples that are pretty slight about, well, they feel this way or we feel that way. And again, have we really asked the residents, or where is this coming from? We may have tried to do something 10 years ago. For me, I don't think that's a deal breaker now. Don't even go there, kind of thing. So I really think that's what we need. We need a new attitude, and we need to find ways that this can be better. The honest investigation, we keep saying we need more information. Well, I think this is part of the problem. Why don't we have this polarization now about, but we have no information. I've heard a couple people say, oh, we did that, we looked into that. I can't get the data. So, I just don't think that all these things are true roadblocks, and that we need to go forward. If you and somebody else combine your money too, you do sometimes have more buying power. Whether it's negotiation, whether it's sharing the costs so that you do one thing better than, just kind of limping along and fix this and then fix that. So, I just don't see a downside to looking into it and getting some information instead of opinions or that. Now, you asked a private question. My understanding of HOA 2 is they're not some big, public community center that people can play golf and they can attend the restaurants. I don't think they can use Desert View, go to pools. I may be incorrect. So I don't feel HOA 2 is, like going to the mall or something, and we over here, have a gate. So I think that would have to, be looked at, and how does it impact the situation? Do we have any information on that? That is what we need, but we need to actually be doing that, not just say we don't have the information.
So I just saw an article by the United Saddlebrook Board, and what they said was the merger would secure more effective operations, reduce cost, and restore a sense of unity to the community. So, secure more effective operations. So, I've got some information for the first 8 months of 2022. HOA1 Golf before depreciation generated $455,000. HOA2 Golf lost $550,000 for that same period. Food and beverage, our food and beverage was subsidized for the first 8 months, $75,000. HOA2 operations, food and beverage was subsidized $315,000. So it appears our operations are pretty effective, and I'm not sure by combining our operations with theirs how we could be more effective, because we already are much, much more effective. Reduce cost. Mergers and acquisitions, usually they're based on synergies. What costs can you offset where you've got duplication of efforts? The biggest items in our budget are roads, golf, food and beverage. So would somebody propose reducing our golf courses, eliminating restaurants? I don't think that could happen. So I don't think there would be any significant cost reductions that would more than offset the professional fees that would be involved in such an undertaking as merging these two. The attorneys and legal fees, unbelievable. Restore a sense of unity to the community. When you see somebody, do you say, "Hi, I live in HOA1," or do you say, "I live in Saddlebrook"? I don't think there's this sense of separation. I think people say they live in Saddlebrook. They don't designate HOA1 or HOA2. And last, the resident survey, I think there were nearly 25% said that the sense of community is why they bought in Saddlebrook. So why do we hear all this, there's no sense of community? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another reason that, as I mentioned earlier, another reason the boards gave was that Robeson is opposed to changing the CC&Rs of Saddlebrook 2 and has 20 years during which he has the right to put a hold on such changes. If you support moving forward, how do you propose to overcome that opposition? And if you are opposed to moving forward, why do you feel the opposition cannot be overcome? Because one Saddlebrook might make it easier for Robeson to sell houses. So. And Steve, we begin with you.
I guess I believe that Mr. Robeson would have a say in what goes on here. If we were to move forward with this and bring in the attorneys and so forth and spend, to begin with, maybe $150,000 just to get some basic advice, it could go up even much higher than that. And assume for a moment that we get to a point where the attorneys even say, well, there's a possibility that we could do this. If Mr. Robeson could then come in and basically say, again, I've said I'm not willing to change the CC&Rs, and that kills it right there. So I'm not sure I like that concept. As far as how would I overcome it, basically, I'll be honest with you, you'd have to deal with Mr. Robeson in a very difficult situation. Try to convince him, I imagine, that it would be beneficial for him. But when I look at this issue, I don't know that he gains anything by going along with this. So I guess that's part of the reason why it'd be a little doubtful that the merger could actually happen in the long run anyway. Thank you.
I understand, as I said earlier, the concern over Robeson and, why would he do it? What would be the advantage, but what would be the disadvantage? I mean, again, I think that's one of those things that we're going to, throw the nails on the road here, but that would be much further ahead in terms of trying to formalize with legal, et cetera, in terms of the cooperation and collaboration. I think there are things you can do, like, for instance, I think in HOA 1 and HOA 2, there is a different rule about how many nights your RV can be in front of your house. So, you know, who really cares if we actually, you know, sort of synthesize, you know, a lot of what we can do right now. Once again, I have concerns about the RUA if we, you know, decide to not look into working more with Saddlebrook 2.
I think it would probably be an obstacle that we could not overcome, and that's one of the reasons why I would be opposed to investigating a merger at this time. Thank you.
Okay, in my role as president of United Saddlebrook, I became aware of this issue, so I thought I'd find out for myself, from the horse's mouth, exactly what the attitude of the Robeson organization is on this issue. So I called up Jack Sarsam, who's vice president of operations of Robeson Communities, and we had a conversation over the phone, and I asked him, you know, how did you feel, you know, about this issue? Can you support us on it? And he said at this time they couldn't, and the reason he gave specifically was that when Robeson builds homes for folks, they sign contracts with prospective homeowners, and that they felt that if in the middle of their contracts a merger was to take place, certain homeowners might decide to use that as an excuse to escape from their contract. Now, I'm taking that argument at face value. That sounds like something, you know, the lawyers have. But you notice he didn't mention anything about CC&Rs or anything else. That was his concern, basically, that their sales would not be affected. I also asked him about how long do you think you'll be operating here in Saddlebrook? And he said 4 to 5 years more. He didn't say 20, 40. He didn't say another 10 or 12 years. So I think concerns about going way out are overblown. I think also, you know, in dealing with the Robeson organization in Saddlebrook, they have to have a concern that if Saddlebrook fails, and that sounds crazy, but I want to talk in a second what that is, that could be a real terrible blot on their record, and I don't think they want to happen. I want you to consider a nightmare scenario, okay? 5 years out, reciprocal use agreement comes up again for consideration by both HOAs. And HOA 2, which almost defeated it in a public vote over 40%, says no. Who's better positioned to survive as a community? HOA 2 takes with them the theater, takes with them pickleball, takes with them the dog park, and leaves us without them. I want you to start thinking about what the effect on your home values would be if there was a split, and we tried to survive on the amenities we have now and not share. And I think that's got to be on their mind too. I think that's a point we can discuss with them and negotiate with them on.
Okay, thank you. That ends the unification questions. I actually have a load more questions. I'm wondering how much how much stamina everybody has. I could ask a couple more, or we could end now. What's the feeling? End it. Okay, end it. Yeah, okay. Well, candidates, you've been led off some very interesting questions. I actually was looking forward to asking you about bare midriffs, but unfortunately I've been prevented. But you'll all be relieved to know that I'm not going to bare mine. So, just a couple of important points. First of all, thank you, candidates. I think overall you made a good attempt to answer the questions. I thank the audience for coming and for the people that are still here for hanging in. I just remind you that an email will be coming out I believe, on October the 21st for those that submit an electronic ballot, and the mail-in ballots will be mailed on that day as well, so you'll probably get them within a couple of days then. Be sure to submit your ballots by November 21st, because they're going to be counted on November 22nd, and we hope that the results will be announced that day. So, and I think with that, thank you again, and that's the end of this year's meeting.